Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Dan Miller, Senior Director of Federal Sales at Ping Identity. Dan, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me on the show.
Great to have you. Great to have you. Let's start by talking a little bit about the role that Ping Identity can play in federal agencies, automating some of the work around provisioning and deprovisioning folks as they come in the agency and leave the agency.
From a Ping Identity perspective, our platform has some identity management capabilities, right? That's going to allow our customers to automate the process of adding new users and removing users as they leave. So provisioning and deprovisioning of those users. So as users come on board, we can automate the provisioning process to give them access to the data and the applications they need in a very fast manner. And conversely, when someone leaves, whether they're retiring, taking the early retirement, whether they're choosing to leave and go somewhere else, or whether they've been furloughed or let go, we can quickly remove access from data too. So we can leverage something like a master user record where you make a change once in the system and then that user is removed from that system, we can take them away from everything else. So thus helping organizations make sure that when users do leave, they no longer have access to the data or the resources, increasing their security posture, which has been a big challenge for a lot of the organizations in the government when they're failing audits. It's because of the fact that they have so many old users in their systems that are no longer even working there.
All right, well, I'm hearing flexibility is kind of a key in all of this. Can you tell me a little bit more about how flexibility in deploying of what you just mentioned is important for agencies at this time?
Sure, yeah. So Ping's got a unique architecture with our technologies, right? We have a full-blown SaaS offering that is FedRAMP High as well as DoD IL5 compliant. We can also deploy our products on-premise in the traditional manner, whether that be through installing them on virtual machines, whether that's deploying them through DevOps, or just installing them on physical hardware like they've done in the past, right? So we can also run in a hybrid mode where you can take both of those environments and combine them. So for example, if you're in a DDIL environment or on a ship, right, the ship leaves port, goes out to sea, doesn't have a lot of connectivity, has a standalone environment all on its own. When it comes back to shore, it can plug in and get all the updated information that it needs. So that provides organizations a lot of flexibility in terms of how they deploy the technology and how they can use it. It also gives you the ability from a SaaS perspective around scalability, rapid provisioning and deprovisioning, as well as cost optimization. So if I hit kind of those three topics real quick, from a scalability perspective, an organization with 50,000 users with 300 plus applications or 1,000 applications, right? Their requirements for authentication, authorization, provisioning, and deprovisioning are going to be pretty high, right? And so with our SaaS offering, we can scale that up as a dedicated single tenant. We can build the infrastructure to meet our customers' requirements specifically. Or if you're using something, say like an external facing, government to citizen requirement, maybe like the Social Security Administration, the IRS, et cetera, where they have tens of millions of users, right? Maybe you only need a peak for tax season, right, of 4 months. We can scale up the environment to meet those high demands during the high season, scale back down during the other 8 months to optimize what the customer needs at the time. Mm-hmm. And then conversely, we can scale down. So if you look at folks like the Department of Defense, or even organizations like FEMA or others that have similar needs where they have a small group of people that need to go somewhere and maybe in a disconnected or limited bandwidth environment, we can run in a very small container, right? Support 10 users, 100 users, 200 users in a very disconnected mode on, say, something that could fit in a backpack, right? So that gives you the ability to also rapidly deprovision and provision users in and out of the system as well, right? Leveraging all the full capabilities, even in a scaled down environment or a scaled up environment. And then lastly, giving you the ability to scale up or scale down on those resources helps save our customers money, right? So if you don't need the high scalability of having the ability to support thousands of authentications per second, right? You only need maybe a couple hundred authentications per second. We can scale down those server requirements and then build it back up at peak times, right? To, again, pass along those cost savings to our customers.
Yeah, well, certainly security is kind of the whole point of all this, making sure that people who are no longer with the agency don't have access to sensitive internal information.
Absolutely, right.
Obviously, an integral part of everything we've been talking about here. Can you tell me a little bit more about how this connects back to zero trust and ensuring that agencies have seamless operations for the folks who should have access to that data and bars people who shouldn't have access from gaining access?
Yeah. So, from a zero trust perspective, as an identity company, we've taken the perspective of having the perimeter or the security perimeter of an organization really being focused on the identity as opposed to the network. Right? From a zero trust architecture, you have multiple pillars, identity being one of those pillars. So instead of looking at who's on the network, we're looking at who is this user and what data do they have access to? What applications do they have access to? So it gives us the ability to look at a zero trust architecture which says, hey, we're going to assume a compromise. So we're never going to trust, we're always going to verify. Right? So Ping does that through leveraging things like explicit verification, right? So using multi-factor authentication, looking at every user, every device as it comes on the network, and ensuring that it should be on the network and who it is, right? And then enforcing things like multi-factor authentication, device posture, device checks, as well as leveraging contextual data around things like time of day, where are they coming from, what are they on, right? Are they on a mobile device? Are they on a desktop? Are they on government furnished equipment or on their own, right? All of these things can have an impact on what those users are allowed to see and what they're not allowed to see. Right? And then doing that in a continuous manner. So if any of those factors change during a user session, or if they've gone to a website and all of a sudden they've downloaded something that compromises that system, we can look at that in real time because we're continuously monitoring those aspects. And then if we need to, we can end that user session, kick them off the network, things of that nature. And then, zero trust shouldn't be a cumbersome thing for users, right? It should be pretty seamless. So taking those aspects that I just talked about and then combining that with things like single sign-on, right? You authenticate strongly once with your credential, whether that's a PIV or a CAC or something else, and then you get access to the resources you're allowed to. And then we do all of that continuous aspect on the back end. And then we can also leverage things like adaptive authentication and risk-based authentication. So from a zero trust perspective, right, it's not a single company that's going to provide a zero trust architecture, right? Zero trust is a team sport. So we are a very standards-based, standards-focused company, and we would work with a lot of the other products that an organization has to integrate some of their, say, like risk-based signals or other types of scenarios where risk might change on a user, or a resource they're accessing they're not allowed to, or it's in another location. We can take all of these things into consideration in real time. So I think that's one of the ways that we do it. I mean, we could talk about zero trust and how we integrate with that, but I would say that those are some of the high watermarks.
Mm-hmm. Not to open a whole other can of worms here, Dan, but there's so much other things to consider.
Sure.
The malicious side of things, insider threats, people who have access and maybe take advantage of that to some effect. Also artificial intelligence, the elevation of cyber threats as a result of that. A lot of other things that agencies need to be preoccupied with these days. Can you tell me a little bit from that perspective how Ping is helping agencies stay on top of this identity piece of it all?
Sure. So we could probably combine a lot of these questions into, have the same answers, if you will. So insider threat, AI, it's really ensuring that the user is who they say they are, that the device they're coming in on is trusted, and that they have the right attributes to access data. And attributes can be anything from a role, right? I mean, 20 years ago, we were talking about role-based access control, right? Now roles are just one of the types of attributes that we can look at about a user. And it could be, hey, what's their role? What's their rank? Are they government? Are they a contractor? Are they a foreign partner? Are they a part-time user? Are they coming in on their own device? Are they on the federal government network? Has their machine been compromised? Has this machine or has this device been used in a malicious attack somewhere else, right? So looking at all these various different factors, and then also checking and continuously checking the authentication, right, of the user and of the device, and being able to implement things like PKI on devices to have that mutual authentication between a server and a desktop or two servers applications. We can ensure that they are allowed to talk to one another. So a lot of these things are just, they're already in place, but they're not plugged together, so to speak, and we can help be the glue that combines everything together to make sure that, hey, the right device, the right person, at the right time gets to see the right data.
Right. Well, to sum it all up, Dan, can you tell me a little bit more about this balance between agencies making sure that they're securing their environment, that they're meeting the letter of the law of what they have to do as far as regulations, as far as what they have to do under statute, and then also this flexibility piece, making sure that everything's running smoothly. Can you underscore that piece of it a little bit more?
From a regulated perspective, Ping Identity does very, very well in complex and highly regulated environments. And with the flexibility of our deployment options, we feel that we're the best company to give our customers that flexibility and be able to meet those stringent requirements, right? So whether it's being in the military or in the civilian space, right? A lot of these organizations have very high security requirements. We can meet those with our FedRAMP High environment and our DoD IL5 environment. But a lot of these organizations have disconnected networks or they have higher level security requirements. And so we're deployed on some of the most highly secure networks in the government today on premise because of the fact that those organizations can't use a cloud service, right? Many of them are disconnected from the network, or some of these networks are disconnected from the internet, so to speak. And so having that flexibility of being able to be deployed on premise or in a FedRAMP High, DoD IL5 SaaS environment gives our customers a lot of flexibility to meet their security requirements. And then from some of the mandates around, like the OMB cybersecurity and zero trust mandates, the DoD's implementation of those, we can help with meeting those identity pillar requirements of zero trust and cybersecurity, while also being a very standards-based company that can work with all the other products that are out there to give organizations a very easy way to approach a zero trust architecture and meet their regulation requirements.
All right. Well, Dan, great insights here. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Great.
Thanks again to today's guest, Dan Miller, Senior Director of Federal Sales at Ping Identity. I'm Jory Heckman, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on Workforce Reimagined.